Hello everyone, welcome to the PMP exam question and answers solving session for March. Now, as you are aware, the syllabus and the format of the PMP exam is changing from July 2026. So if you are a PMP exam aspirant, you should make every effort to clear the exam before the format changes, and that means to give your best to prepare and pass the exam within June 2026, and this video will help you to do that. So just like the previous months, we would be solving 5 medium to high difficulty level PMP exam style questions as per the current exam format, which is valid till June 2026 in this video. And for each of the 5 questions, we would be doing a detailed explanation on the correct and the incorrect answer choices. The intent of this exercise is firstly to test how well you are prepared for the PMP exam. So for example, you can use this scorecard that you see on screen to test and assess your performance across the 5 questions. And secondly, the goal of this exercise is to develop your understanding on the correct process and strategy to solve PMP exam questions efficiently on your actual exam day. So please give this video a like and let's get started with question number 1.
Right, so question number 1, please pause the video and try to answer the question before we solve this together. Right, so let's get started. The VP of sales is not quite happy because the Agile team keeps delivering low impact features. Okay, the business isn't seeing value and the project manager needs to course correct, and the course correction should be done by not adding bureaucracy, okay, but by fixing how the value is defined and prioritized within the Agile framework itself. Okay, mind that there are 2 correct answer choices as part of this question, and to get full marks for this question you need to select both of these answer choices in your PMP exam. So let's evaluate the options one by one. If we look at option 2 first, which says ask the team to complete a training course on sales fundamentals, think about it. Is it a lack of sales knowledge really why the team is building low value features? Not really, right? Because the team builds what the backlog tells them to build. Okay, as simple as that. The problem isn't team knowledge. Okay, it's about how value has been defined upstream, and training unfortunately doesn't fix a prioritization problem. So option 2 is an incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option C, which suggests to increase story point sizes to bundle more valuable features together. Now, this doesn't really fit, right? Because story points measure the effort and complexity, okay, not business value. Inflating story sizes doesn't make features more valuable, okay? It just makes the stories bigger. You'd actually be mixing up 2 very different dimensions of agile planning if you are going with option 3. Okay, and that's really not what you would like to do as the scrum master or the project manager, because as we discussed, just being part of the story or increasing the size of the story point doesn't make the feature valuable automatically. Okay, so option 3 is incorrect. Let's look at option 5, which suggests the VP of sales to approve each user story before it enters the sprint. Okay, now it's quite a tricky proposition, honestly. Okay, now on the surface it sounds like you are bringing stakeholder accountability, right? But really, if you think about it, adding a mandatory approval gate for a very senior stakeholder like your VP of sales for every single story disrupts the sprint's cadence and creates a bottleneck, right? And that's not really agile, right? That's micromanagement or escalation dressed up as governance. Okay, it undermines the product owner's authority, it undermines the scrum master's authority, and slows the team down. Okay, and of course you can't expect the VP of sales having so much time to sit and sign off each of your user stories before you enter it into the sprint cycle. Okay, that is ridiculous. So option 5 is definitely incorrect. Now if you look at option 1, which suggests to strengthen the value criteria in the definition of ready, is a very sensible choice. Okay, so the definition of ready is your quality gate before a story enters the sprint. Okay, so if you embed business value thresholds into it, low value stories simply don't get pulled in, right? As simple as that. Think of it like as a filter, okay? Only stories that meet the value bar are sprint eligible, okay? When you are doing the story prioritization before you are starting the sprint cycle. It's quite clean, quite effective, and very agile compliant. So option 1 is definitely one of the correct answer choices. And let's look at option 4, which is our next correct answer choice, which suggests to survey customers and incorporate value rankings into the backlog prioritization. So if you really think about it, this option does really get into the root cause, right? The backlog isn't reflecting what customers actually value, and gathering direct user input and using it to re-rank the backlog ensures the team is always working on what matters most. And that is what is exactly in line with Agile principles. So option 4 is another correct answer choice for this question. So the correct answers to this question are option 1 and option 4.
Now, if you are preparing for the PMP exam in 2026, I would suggest that you check out my PMP exam preparation courses on Udemy. All the courses are very highly rated amongst the students, and many PMP exam aspirants have passed the PMP exam with the help of these courses. And just to assure you, all the courses are fully updated and compliant as per the current version of the PMP exam, which will stay in effect till June 2026. You will find all the relevant links in the description section of this video. And now let's move on to question number 2.
Right, so question number 2, the drill will remain the same. Please read the question and try to answer it before we solve this together. Right, so let's get started. A critical network engineer is being pulled out mid-project during a complex infrastructure deployment. Okay, now the team is of course worried, and the project manager now needs to respond. And the key word in the question is what should the project manager do first to resolve this issue? Okay, and that single word first changes everything about how you evaluate each answer option. Okay, very, very critical learning for your PMP exam. So let's start by evaluating the options one by one. So option 1, discuss the conflict with the project sponsor and develop a response strategy. Okay, now escalating to the sponsor might be necessary eventually, but do you really think it is necessary right now? I mean, think about it. You haven't even assessed what the impact is yet, right? So going to your sponsor without data or a clear picture of the consequence is quite premature as a project manager. So you'd essentially be raising an alarm without knowing the impact of it, right? So it is an unnecessary escalation. So that is why option 1 is an incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option 2. Use coaching tools and techniques to motivate the remaining team. Now that's also incorrect, okay? Because motivation is important for sure, but the team isn't disengaged, right? They are raising a legitimate project concern, and concerns are raised when teams are engaged and they feel part of the project, okay? Concerns are raised when the project success or failure matters to the team, right? So coaching them at this point sidestep the real issue entirely, okay? So you'd be definitely addressing the mood in the room, but you will be ignoring the fire on the table, right? As simple as that. So option 2 is definitely incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option 3, which suggests identify and onboard a replacement resource with equivalent skills. Now, it's a double-edged sword, really, okay? Because replacing the resource sounds proactive on the surface, right? But if you jump straight into the solution before you even know the full scope of the problem, that might be quite tricky. Okay, what is the cost of this resource? What would be the additional timeline this resource will be bringing if you bring in this resource into your project team? Okay, so replacing someone without an impact assessment of cost, on time, on skills, etc. is reactive. Okay, it's not strategic. So option 3 is also incorrect. So the correct answer to this question is option 4, which is to acknowledge the team's concern and conduct an impact assessment first. Okay, and this is really, if you think about it, the textbook definition of how PMI wants you to act when you are presented with a problem. Okay, first you acknowledge because the team's concern is valid and they need to be heard. Then you assess because no informed decision can be made without understanding the actual impact on scope, schedule, cost, risk, etc. Right? And everything else after you have done that impact assessment, which could be escalation, which could be motivation, which could be bringing in new resources, planning mitigation actions, etc., etc., follows after you have done the initial data gathering and impact assessment. As simple as that. So the correct answer to this question is option 4.
Now, before we move on to question number 3, I would like to introduce you to my PMP exam study group on YouTube. It's a monthly subscription-based study group where I share daily tips on highly nuanced topics and strategies to help you pass the PMP exam. The fees are very nominal. You can try it for a month or so and you will be able to see a dramatic improvement in the way you approach to solve PMP exam questions. Feedback from students for this study group has been excellent. You will find the link to join the study group in the description section of this video in case you are interested. So now let's move on to question number 3.
Right, so question number 3, please pause the video, try to answer the question first before we solve this together. So let's get started with a summary of the scenario first, okay? So a critical data integration failure on an ERP migration project has been resolved and the project is back on track. Well, however, the project manager has just been warned that the same failure is likely to surface on future rollouts, okay? So the question is about the right first response to that warning, okay? And the sequencing here, which comes with that word of first in the question stem, is everything between the right answer and the wrong answer for this question, okay? So please listen to the next section of this question analysis very, very carefully. Now, if you look at option 2 first, which suggests to create a risk report and keeping it up to date and current throughout, is incorrect, okay? Because the warning is about future projects, okay? Not the current one. Creating a risk report at this stage addresses the wrong audience, okay? Risk report is valuable for sure, but it is not the first response to an organizational warning about recurring issues, okay? And that is why option 2 is an incorrect answer choice. If you look at option 3, it suggests to notify the project sponsor about the warning, okay? Now, does this really make sense as a first step? Because again, you are escalating to the sponsor before you have even documented what happened or what was learned, what was the impact, etc., etc. Okay, so what good escalation will do, right? Okay, so you need to have the documentation and the analysis and the impact assessment in the first place. So option 3 is definitely an incorrect answer choice. Now let's look at option 4 because that's quite tricky. Okay, so option 4 is suggesting to update the lessons learned first and then the issue log, which is quite opposite to option 1 is suggesting, which is to update the issue log first and then update the lessons learned register. So the $1,000,000 question is, which is the correct sequence between option 4 and option 1? Okay. Now, if you look at option 4 first, which suggests to update the lessons learned register first and then the issue log, that feels right on the surface, okay? But here is the very, very critical nuance you need to understand. If you jump straight to lessons learned before the issue log is formally closed out, you are building on an unverified foundation, right? So not every team member may agree that the issue is fully resolved. And you yourself as a project manager can't go and update the lessons learned register first without even onboarding your overall team members in a common ground, okay? So the lessons learned register, if you think about it, needs to be documented basis some evidence, right? And that evidence lives in the issue log, okay? And that is why the correct sequence or the correct answer to this question is option 1, which is to update the issue log first and then update the lessons learned register, because updating the issue log first creates a formally documented team aligned record that the issue has been resolved. Okay, so it's not about only you as a project manager saying that the issue has been resolved, but it is also your team unanimously agreeing that the issue has been resolved. Okay, and that's what is reflected first in the issue log. Okay, Now think about it, without that shared confirmation, different team members, as I was mentioning, may have different interpretations of the resolution status, right? So once that common understanding is locked in through the issue log, then the lessons learned register can be updated with accuracy and credibility. And that documented knowledge then becomes a reusable organizational process asset or OPAs, directly addressing the warning about future projects. So the correct answer to this question is option 1, which is to update the issue log first and then basis that common understanding, update the lessons learned register. Option 4 is a very close answer choice, but it is incorrect because of the reason as we have discussed.
Right, let's now move on to question number 4.
Right, so question number 4, please read the question and try to answer it first before we solve this together. Right, so let's start with the summary of the scenario. A vendor supplied structural component has failed quality inspections, and obviously the customer has rejected the deliverable, but the vendor is refusing to fix it. Now the project manager is now at a decision crossroad. The question is asking what to do before deciding on the next steps. Okay, so the focus for the question is entirely on what information you need to gather first. Very important. So in light of that analysis, let's look at the options one by one. Option 1, check the service level agreement with the vendor. Now, this is an incorrect answer choice, okay? Because an SLA is relevant in service-based agreements, okay? So for example, think IT support contracts or managed services, okay? But in a construction procurement scenario, the governing document should not be an SLA, okay? It's the formal contract, okay? Because an SLA is too narrow in such a scenario of construction and doesn't really cover the full scope of vendor obligations, remedies, dispute resolution processes, etc. etc. Okay, so option 1 is not the correct answer choice for sure. Let's look at option 3, which suggests to check the internal quality assurance reports. Okay, now for sure, quality assurance reports tell you what went wrong, but in this scenario, that is the data which you already have, right? Because the team, if you think about it, has confirmed the defect. Okay, but the QA reports don't tell you what you can do about it. Reviewing them at this stage doesn't really move you any closer to resolving the vendor dispute, right? So it's a bit of a pointless or redundant exercise. And that is why option 3 is also an incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option 4, review the resource management plan and document lessons learned. Now that is quite extraneous, guys, right? Because the resource management plan deals with team roles and responsibilities. It has no bearing on a vendor compliance dispute whatsoever. And documenting lessons learned right now, not even before the issue has even been resolved, is completely premature. Okay, and that is why that doesn't make sense at all. Option 4 is an incorrect answer choice. So the correct answer to this question is option 2, which is to review the procurement management plan and the contract agreements. Okay, and this is exactly what PMI would also expect you to do as the project manager. The procurement management plan outlines how vendor relationships are governed, and the contract defines what the vendor is legally obligated to deliver. Okay, it also defines what constitutes a breach of contracts, what remedies are available, what are the penalty clauses, indemnity clauses, etc. etc. And for sure, it also includes dispute resolution procedures as well. So if you really think about it, you cannot decide on the next steps without first knowing what your contractual position is. Okay, and that document is your roadmap for everything else that could follow from there. So the correct answer to this question is option 2.
Next, moving on to question number 5. Remember, the target is to get all the 5 out of the 5 questions correct, okay? However, the minimum expectation is that you will get at least 4 out of the 5 questions correct to consider yourself fairly well prepared for the PMP exam. You can assess your level of preparation according to this scorecard. So here comes question number 5.
Right, so question number 5, please read the question and try to answer it first before we solve this together. Right, so let's get started. Let's look at the scenario. So 6 sprints in an ongoing digital healthcare platform project has happened already, and it hasn't been a smooth sailing project. Okay, so the team keeps getting hit by clients changing data privacy and regulatory requirements, which keeps throwing the scope and the schedule of the sprint or the project overall off track. Now the project manager recognizes that a fresh approach is needed heading into the next sprint to prevent further delays. Okay. And that phrase, fresh approach to the next iteration, is your biggest clue here to get this question right. Okay. So listen carefully. So let's look at the answer choices. Option 2, conduct a cost benefit analysis for adopting new compliance management tools. Well, think about it, right? So you are into sprints already, you have completed 6 of it, and you are dealing with recurring regulatory disruptions. Now, is this really the moment to start evaluating new tools? That's a significant investment of your time and energy, right? And you haven't even identified whether tool is the actual problem yet, right? So this jumps to a solution before the problem is fully understood, not the ideal first move. So option 2 is the incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option 3, research technology trends and management tools used on similar projects. Again, an incorrect answer choice, okay, because it doesn't really fit, does it? Researching external trends is a broad exploratory activity that could take you in any number of directions, right? It also assumes the problem is technological in nature. Okay, that's an assumption, may not be true, but the scenario clearly tells us the disruptions are regulatory and compliance driven, right? So essentially, by resorting to option number 3, you would be solving the wrong problem entirely. So definitely an incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option number 4, which suggests to facilitate a backlog refinement meeting and include the client compliance change requests. Now, this one feels quite tempting, isn't it? And fair enough, backlog refinement is absolutely a legitimate agile practice. But here is the very fine nuance to this answer choice option 4, which is incorrect, okay? Because think about it, what's the guarantee that the client's compliance policies won't change again between now and the sprint start, okay? So if you jump straight into backlog refinement without first stepping back to assess all the improvement areas holistically, you are locking yourself into one specific solution path without exploring whether it's even the right one. Okay. So backlog refinement could itself be one of the improvement actions that emerges from the retrospective, but it shouldn't skip the queue and go first, okay? Because backlog refinement can be one of the ways in which this problem could be tackled. But until and unless you do a root cause analysis or improvement action planning based on the retrospective of whatever has happened over the last 6 or 7 sprints, you are not in a position to say that backlog refinement is something that if fixed would fix your overall problem, right? So in that logic, if you really think about it, you are treating a symptom rather than addressing the underlying approach to the problem, and that is the core reason why option 4 is the incorrect answer choice. So the correct answer to this question is option 1, which is to rank the improvement items and implement actions from the last retrospective. Okay, and this, if you think about it, is the correct first step. And here is why the scenario language, if you go to the actual question, is also a giveaway. Okay, it clearly states a fresh approach to the next iteration to avoid possible delays. Okay, that is textbook retrospective thinking for agile projects. So the retrospective is specifically designed for the team to reflect on what happened, identify what needs to change, and prioritize those improvements before even moving forward. Okay, crucially, ranking the improvement items ensures that the team tackles the most impactful changes first rather than scattering their effort overall. Okay, and here's the key: backlog refinement, going back to option number 4, can help in compliance tracking, can help in stakeholder communications improvement, etc. etc. And any of these could emerge from the retrospective as one of the prioritized actions. Okay, so ranking the importance of each improvement item as part of the actions coming out of the retrospectives of the previous sprints is the activity to be done first, because if you go to the question stem, it is asking that what should the project manager do first before you tackle that, whether that problem could be solved by retrospective, could be solved by, let's say, spikes or any kind of root causing sessions that you further would like to do with the team to address this problem. Okay, so for that logic, the correct answer to this question is option 1. Option 4 is a very close answer choice, but it is incorrect because of the reasons as we have discussed.
I hope you liked the session, guys. Please press the like button and subscribe to this channel if you really feel that this session has helped you in your PMP exam preparation journey. And I'll see you again in the next video.